When it comes to personality types, everyone's going to have their own idea of what boring really is. But in general, when it comes to the most boring personality type, sources often include the ISTJ. Why is this? And is it a fair generalization? Well, get ready, psychos, because today we're going over the top 6 reasons why most people consider ISTJs the most boring personality type. But before we start, have you liked and subscribed? Go ahead, it'll only take a second. Alright, let's dive right into the video, starting with reason number 1. Following the rules. The first, and possibly the most obvious reason ISTJs are often seen as boring is their tendency to follow the rules. In contrast to the cool factor of going your own way and making your own rules, ISTJs tend to prefer having the rules outlined for them, and once established, they generally follow those rules. Now, this isn't always necessarily the case. If the rules are too vague or make little sense, the ISTJs will generally deem them invalid, since rules should be clear and concrete. They'll also diverge from following the rules if they can see a way to optimize them. So, an ISTJ doesn't necessarily follow the rules just because they're rules, but more so because they act like guidelines. To an ISTJ, rules are like the box that sand goes in. It lets them know where the borders are, what they're working with, and keeps the sand where they want it. In contrast, they see just going about things on a whim as the equivalent of pouring a bunch of sand into the grass. Sure, you can still move it around, but eventually it scatters out and your ability to manipulate it dissolves. This perspective makes it easier to understand the ISTJ's reasons for preferring rules, though the fact they don't necessarily explain this while following the rules means they'll likely still be seen as the stereotypical square. Reason number 2. Finicky communicators. Tying into their preference for rules, this ISTJ personality type also likes people to be concise and clear with their own phrasing. For example, if you invite an ISTJ to a party, but give them casual answers to their questions of when to arrive or what they should bring, you'll likely have a frustrated introvert on your hands. The reason being that "come when you want" is so vague that it sounds like "any time today is fine," which could be true or could not be. They don't like uncertainty, and it goes the same for if you ask them to just bring something. They don't know if you're talking about burgers, napkins, or lawn chairs. This lack of concise and clear communication makes their brain go haywiring trying to figure out what you mean, which is why they'd rather get specific answers like "come around 5" or something like "chips and salsa would be great" to such questions. With that being said, this sternness and insistence on presenting information in such a way can make them seem like irritating librarians to other personality types, and it's not difficult to see why this could knock them down a few notches on the fun meter. Reason number 3. The Mona Lisa face. Another reason ISTJs are seen as boring is they are often unresponsive compared to other personality types. The best example of this being their framed Mona Lisa face. This is when the ISTJ personality type puts on their blank face and just sort of stares while taking in information. Yet, to put it lightly, it can seem like they're not paying attention, even when you know they are, if they don't frequently engage you with responses. It's just not as enjoyable to speak with them, as it often feels like you're talking to a wall. To an ISTJ, this doesn't necessarily make sense because their purpose in being still is to listen to what you're saying. For them, the lack of response is proof that they are paying attention and not losing concentration on something else, that your thoughts are important. So again, the introverted aspect of the ISTJ makes them come across differently than they intend. But the good news is, once ISTJs know about this, they can make adjustments to be more expressive while listening, showing the interest they're already experiencing. Reason number 4. Literal thinkers. Another reason ISTJs are considered boring is because how famous they are for taking things at face value. This is the person that, upon asking why they haven't seen you in a while, will actually believe you when you say, "Oh, I was in Antarctica researching the polar bears." Of course, they may figure out after a few moments that you're just joking, but those seconds of confusion can make it difficult and awkward to joke with an ISTJ as casually as some other personality types. Similarly, if you're joking with others and an ISTJ is involved in the discussion, they may take offense to a seemingly mean-spirited joke you made because they take it to a truly passive-aggressive dig, versus just giving someone a hard time in good fun. This can deflate conversations even if they're just one part of the whole and make further discussions incredibly awkward, even if they apologise for misunderstanding. And if they remain unconvinced that their interpretation came out of context, you may have a new enemy for at least the rest of the night. This is a big part of what led to the ISTJ reputation as a party pooper, who can ruin get-togethers with their robot-like literal interpretations. You can ultimately bypass this issue by clarifying that you're joking shortly after a statement, which can help your personal engagements with the ISTJ personalities. But it doesn't help them much when it comes to a reputation of being fun or humorless prudes with no understanding of subtlety. So, those are the reasons ISTJs tend to be seen as boring in conversations or when it comes to following the rules. But another factor in why other personality types often perceive them as the most boring is reason number 5, their preoccupation with ease and comfort. Again, flying in the face of the common cool characteristics of dressing to impress or standing out, as well as taking risks and living on the edge, this ties back into their introverted nature. Introverts tend to get overwhelmed by prolonged social interactions because of the ongoing mental stimulation, and the same rules apply to processing physical signals. ISTJs are so sensitive to this kind of stimulus that they'll be aware of that seam in the sock all day long. They'll evaluate the different factors of something like riding a roller coaster or skydiving and see only the potential danger from it. For them, none of this logically makes sense to pursue or endure, and so it overwhelms their mental processing. Conversely, when they're in a comfortable environment, including soft, spacious clothes, they feel at ease to contemplate the various thoughts whirling through their heads. For them, this stability feels like a solid launching point to imagine different ways to improve upon a design or optimize a process. So while they seem outwardly very boring, their simple silence and their brainstorming that goes with it can ironically lead to enhanced experiences for other personality types. Think of it this way: waterproof speakers that you can take to the beach or a friend's pond were likely an optimization developed by an ISTJ during quiet contemplation. In this way, they may not have been the life of the party, but they indirectly ensured that the party could stay alive after the speakers plunked into the water. Of course, like other ISTJ characteristics, this requires a little investigation to understand. Not so good when judging a personality at face value, and ultimately, while this makes ISTJs more interesting in terms of their contribution to the fun, it doesn't make them much more fun to the rest of us when the party actually happens. And this is why the final, but most significant reason ISTJs are seen as boring ultimately comes down to reason number 6: how they express their characteristics. Certain personality types find comfort in abiding by the rules or taking things literally. But it's the way ISTJs express most of these characteristics that makes them come across as generally shy or standoffish. If you don't know how they operate or why, then you're bound to find this combination of behaviours boring. The ways that an ISTJ processes information and how they express it flies in the face of conventional, casual fun behaviours. Ultimately, whether you'll find the ISTJ fun to be around or not has a lot to do with how flexible you are in your means of communication. Dancing and partying and joking around on the beach isn't going to be a good environment for them. But as a colleague, where you know more about the personalities and they're more comfortable with you, ISTJs can be the low-keyed kind of fun that some people might need when they're burnt out from all the high-octane hijinks. Well, that wraps up today's video, Psychos. So, if you're an ISTJ personality type, have you been deemed boring by friends or family? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to leave us a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one.